I took another deep breath as I tried to calm my nerves and focus. Although, I have to say, a few more of those deep breaths and I was liable to pass out right then and there. I had to keep that in mind. But as I stood there in the cave, with those dancing shadows and crackling fire, and Minjara's words still echoing in my mind, I found that, breathing exercises or not, I was the victim of assault. I had been drugged and dragged here against my will, and now I was a prisoner. Simple as that. The odd shapes and sounds in the cave were no doubt the effects of the hallucinogens I had been given. I only hope they did no permanent damage to my brain or nervous system. They will have to wear off soon, I hope. I made a quick note that the first thing I was going to do as soon as I escaped from that cave was go to the doctor. The police would come second. And getting out of there was obviously my top priority. I stood at the entrance of that small circular room with the fire and cave paintings and looked out in front of me. There was nothing but darkness. But somehow, it was more than that. More than a darkness. It was, I don't know how else to describe it, a nothingness. Just a void. Then it hit me, though I struggled to believe it, because it couldn't be. It just couldn't. I mean, it couldn't be possible. Before I launch into an explanation of why I was so incredulous in that moment, let me tell you a little bit about my field of study, because there are probably some questions as to how someone like myself, a scientist, specialises in a field that most would call fringe science at best and fantasy at worst, although they wouldn't call it fantasy outright. To be kind, they would call it mythology. Let me start by saying that the study of the dream time is in fact a scientific field, albeit a very specialised one. There are few scholars in this field who have dedicated their entire professional lives to studying the dream time, and they all work at Magi. As scientists, we aren't really appreciated in academic circles, and although our work is published in peer-reviewed publications, it isn't really accepted in the mainstream, though things are slowly changing, thanks to the Asrian threat. In the past, the study of the dream time fell under the category of theology and, to a lesser degree, anthropology. It slowly began to gain credibility after the 1990 Declaration of Rights, when the Asrian people demanded basic human rights and recognition as a culture. Governments all around the world saw this declaration as a potential security threat, and some nations reacted violently to it. Others were more cautiously accepting, but all of them launched their own secret studies of what made Asrians Asrian. Magi, for its part, has been a top-secret organisation for thousands of years, or so the story goes. It is said that Magi as an institution can trace its origins all the way back to the reign of the Persian Emperor Darius I, although I'm fuzzy on the details. A historian would be better suited to tell that tale. I was more interested in the dream time for personal reasons, going all the way back to an ancestor of mine, William Baldwin Spencer. I always credited him with founding the modern-day field of study. That study of the dream time is why I was so incredulous in that moment as I looked at the void in front of me. The dream time teaches us that in the beginning there was the formless. And I mean that in a literal sense, as in before the Big Bang. Before the universe as we know it came to be, there was only a great emptiness of energy, a nothingness, a void, the formless. A giant, endless, infinitesimal darkness. From that formless came the building blocks of all creation, the Big Bang. From the Big Bang came the universe, or more accurately, space-time. From space-time came the stars and planets, and from many of those planets came life. From that life came the primeval spirit, the primordial struggle to survive. From that primeval spirit came the concept of the dream time. And from the dream time came the gods. It's also simplistic in its perfection, so intelligent in its design and relentlessly mathematical in its expression. That nothingness, that void I spoke about, the formless, that was the same void I was looking at right now, right in front of me, there, surrounding this small room. This was the emptiness of creation, the raw energy from which all things flowed, the formless. But how? How was that possible? It wasn't, right? How could the formless exist in a place with form? Everything in the universe has a form, whether we can see it or not, even if it evades all our senses. Whether something exists as a solid, gas, or liquid, it has a form. Yet somehow, here it was, the formless. This can only mean one thing. I was high as a kite. It's those damn drugs Minjara gave me. That's the only explanation. When I see him again, I was going to beat his ass, then go to the doctor, then the police. Though maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just beat his ass and call it even. Go back to Magi with an empty report. I could live with that. Still though, there was this voice in my head, a voice that wondered, what if all this was real? What if this really was the formless I was looking at? I glimpsed the shadows on the wall, which were now standing rigidly, almost in a defiant posture, once again matching my mood in that moment. If you want a way out, make one, Minjara had said. I looked at the formless, then back at the shadows, then back at the formless. Whether I was under the influence or not, there are some times, when no one else is around, I would give the ridiculous a try. It's how I made it this far after all, and this was the perfect opportunity to give that ridiculous a go. And so, I closed my eyes, took another deep breath, and imagined a door, and then a walkway leading to it. Focused, hard, harder than I ever have before, a door and a path leading to it. I didn't even know what was on the other side of the door, just that it was a way out of here. There was a sensation at first, in my fingertips, then in my toes, and then the sensation began to spread, from my fingers and toes to all parts of my body. It felt cold. It gave me the chills. I squeezed my eyes tighter and kept my mind focused on that door. The sensation began to warm as it reached my head, bringing with it a sense of calm. In some odd way, that was the strangest thing in a day full of strangeness. All the things I saw, the conversation with Minjara, the dancing shadows, this calmness was the strangest thing, because there was no reason for it. I had been drugged and abducted. I was in a dark cave, possibly hallucinating, and beyond that, I had no idea where I was. My life was very much in danger, and at that moment, Minjara or some of his men could return to do who knows what to me. It's never a good time to panic, but to be completely calm, as if I was visiting my favourite spa, wasn't good either. Note to self, I really must visit my favourite spa again in Soho. So, there I was, standing in the darkness, now feeling a deep sense of calm as the door and the pathway became crystal clear in my mind. It seemed to become real, so real I could touch it. A plain white door, old and worn with chipped paint. My imagination is hyper-realistic. Then there was silence, a dead calm, if you will. I could hear a pin drop. I slowly opened my eyes, and there, in front of me, in the void of the formless, was a door. Old and worn with chipped paint, exactly as it had appeared in my mind. It was here now, about 3 meters in front of me, with a pathway leading towards it. I looked around in shock and confusion. I closed and opened my eyes a few times just to make sure I wasn't still hallucinating. It was definitely still there, a door. Maybe I should have imagined what would be on the other side of the door, but for now, there appeared to be a way out. Minjara told me to make one, and somehow, I did. I made a way out. Maybe this really was the formless. Or maybe it was the drugs. Whatever the case, there was only one way to find out. And so, with another deep breath, I took my first steps down the path to the old